Today on the Nerds of Comedy, we are talking about Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Now, we actually recorded this episode over a year ago, but for some reason, it kept on getting flagged by the studio, it kept on getting blocked. No matter how many appeals I filed to say that it was fair use, they just would not allow me to release it. So I finally just gave up and just figured this would be one of those lost episodes that nobody would ever get to see. Fast forward a year, we have a brand new Nerds of Comedy channel, which I will explain the reasons why that is in a future video probably. But we have a new channel. I have a new computer that I'm doing all my editing on, which means the render times are a lot faster. The editing is so much easier. So I gave it another crack. I made a bunch of edits, and finally, after over a dozen tries, I finally got the studio to unblock this episode. So here it is, a year in the making, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Is it worth the year-long wait? Probably not, but here it is.
Bill, what? Strange things are afoot at the Circle K.
Welcome to the Nerds of Comedy. We are back with the original trio from our very first episode. I am Sean Devereux, joined by my lovely and talented co-host, Mr. Brad McMurran.
Yes, I am back, and I'm glad to be back instead of that god inferno, terrible woman, Hillary Stallings. So I'm glad to be back on here. I feel still a little insulted by a lot of this, Sean. I mean, we are old friends, but more importantly, since Hillary Stallings got engaged, I've found her to be deplorable.
Well, in your defense, you thought she was pretty deplorable before she got engaged.
Yeah, she's a good performer, but a bad person.
That's right. That's right.
Mm-hmm.
Still bitter that she's been made an official co-host, but we'll get into that another time.
Sure.
Joining us, he is a fellow pusher. We have known him and have performed with him for over 15 years. For myself, Brad, even longer. It is Mr. Ed Carden.
Woo! The Cardigan. The Carp. Eddie C. What are some of the other nicknames?
The Kid.
The Kid. What was
the
there was
Kid,
some
Spanky.
Spanky.
Well, there were lots of them.
I've never met a man with more nicknames than this guy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you and I coined.
It's not like Ed is a difficult name to say.
That's right. You remember we had a performer in our group that actually thought your name was Ed Cardigan for like 4 years straight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was. And here's the thing, like it's become a fun thing because that person had no idea what my real name was.
Nope, Tiffany Chilcott. We miss her. But yeah, Ed, good to see you, man.
It wasn't like we never used my full name in rehearsals ever. She just wasn't.
No. And she was also a big fan of the sweater, so maybe that's what it was.
That could be it.
So we are here today to talk about Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. The new movie is coming out this week. So we're going to tackle Excellent Adventure today. And then next week we will tackle Bogus Journey. So Ed, tell us all about Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure.
Well, Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. It's a comedy from 1989. Stars Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter. Basically, and it sort of came out during the late 80s when heavy metal music was at its most mainstream. You had bands like Guns N' Roses, Poison, Motley Crue. And Bill and Ted, our protagonists, are very much aspiring heavy metal musicians. But as we learn, as we go through the movie, Bill and Ted are very important to the future of the timeline for the universe. So people from the future go back in time to make sure that they pass their high school history class. Big oral presentation they have to do. And they don't know anything about history. So these future forces converge to try to make sure that happens so that their band and the song that unites the universe can happen.
There you go. It has a pretty cool cast. Obviously, you have Keanu Reeves and Alex Winter. Whoa. Bernie Casey as the high school principal, or not the high school principal, their history teacher. You have Jane Wyland from the Go-Go's playing Joan of Arc.
Which I didn't even know.
Yeah.
We just had a second take on this before we came on. I'm a huge Go-Go's and never realized that.
It also had Clarence Clemens as one of the members of the leaders of the society in the future.
Did you say George Carlin already?
Oh, and then of course we have George Carlin as Rufus.
Rufus, yeah.
And then my favorite, we talked about this earlier in the Lost Bill and Ted episode, Diane Franklin as one of the English princesses who is from Better Off Dead. And I had a huge crush on her when I was in high school.
I don't have any problem telling you that I'm going to make you put that movie on here. That movie is huge for me. Better Off Dead is one of my favorite movies, but I remember her too, when she would say, was it Ricky? Where she was like, he's always putting his testicles on me. And he's like, tentacles. It's an NT there, you know. I always like that. I liked her too.
So it sounds like you are a big Bill and Ted fan.
Yeah, I am. I like this first movie a whole lot. I like the second movie a lot. You know, when it came out at time, another thing we talked about in the earlier take was that this movie was rated PG, which surprised me. Like, I always thought it was rated PG-13, but like going back and watching it, nothing really that objectionable. And like the one thing I will say that I think was a turn off for people that were older when this movie came out, like yourself, Sean, is that it is kind of a kids movie. It's kind of like high school characters in a more kid-friendly setting. Although there are some adult themes, and you know, there's some lines that Bill and Ted say that haven't aged all that well.
Oh yeah, there's a couple of moments in this one, and then one in particular in Bogus Journey that I was like, whoa. But yeah, so it came out in 1989, so I was a senior in high school. It's showing my age when this came out. Brad, you're a couple years younger than me, and then Ed.
I think 4 years. I think I'm 4 years younger than you. I think I was at I almost positive it came out in February '89, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if it came out in February of '89, I'd have been in 8th grade, 7th grade, 8th grade, and I saw this at Pembroke Mall in the movie theater. I actually remember going to go see this movie, and I'm with Ed. I enjoyed it in the movie theater. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw it on video with my parents, and my parents actually liked it.
Yeah.
Which surprised me when I was a kid. I thought that like I was kind of forcing them to watch this silliness, but like when it was over, they're like, you know, that was neat. We really liked that.
Yeah.
I did not like it when I first saw it. I saw it in high school, probably at Lynnhaven Mall. And granted, I was a pretty pretentious, artsy-fartsy theater kid back then, as opposed to now. And I'm not a big fan of movies where the lead characters are really dumb.
The truth is, Wild Stallions will never be a super band until we have Eddie Van Halen on guitar.
Yes, Bill, but I do not believe we will get Eddie Van Halen until we have a triumphant video.
I like my protagonist to be a little bit smarter than that. So yeah, it never really latched onto. The only thing I took from the movie was Strange Things Afoot at the Circle K.
Bill, what? Strange things are afoot at the Circle K.
That has stuck with me, but I've never really thought about this movie at all until word came out that they were making a sequel.
Well, plus you hate heavy metal music.
Yeah, not a big fan of heavy metal music at all.
And I think we need.
You were listening to like Echo and the Bunnymen and like
REM,
like college rock. At this.
I got to hang out with that group you talked about, Echo and the Bunnymen. That was one of my favorite times I had right before the pandemic a year ago. I got to hang out with them at the Norwood. They're really nice. But I think it's important to tell this audience, if it's okay with you, Sean.
Sure.
That the guy that we are on the phone with, Ed, is actually the hugest hairband kind of guy I've ever met. If you used to ride in his car, I'm sure it's changed since you've had a child, I hope, or a couple children, is that you wouldn't get into Ed's car without hearing something from the 80s. In a way, it almost seemed like Ed was just anti-grunge, but the way he still was listening to this music when I first met him. And I know you're still a huge fan of that music. Am I wrong?
No, I mean, like, you know, here's the thing. Like, my metal tastes have evolved a little bit into more pretentious European stuff, but I do really like the soundtrack to this movie. Generally, the bands that like Bill and Ted like Iron Maiden, are bands that I really like. But it's like, I could see, Sean, how you would not be feeling this as much, because Bill and Ted as high schoolers were kind of the antithesis of who you were as a high schooler. So it's like, I'm sure you were like, why do I want to watch these jerk offs being jerk offs?
Yeah, that they were the bane of my existence in high school. So why would I want to watch a movie about them?
And one that kind of like endears them and basically paints them as the saviors of humanity.
Yeah. I also say, I think that the audience ought to know on this is that we, the three people in this group, we should have probably brought up at the beginning, is we're part of a group that was called Spartacus that does history kind of comedy, improvisation comedy, where we get a subject from the crowd and we make up our own history with it. So there was this kind of aspect where I was interested to see Sean's take on this, because it does have a lot of history in it. Yeah,
it does, but in a weird way. So watching it now, I rewatched it the other day, and it really hasn't gone up much in my appreciation rewatching it. There's really not a lot of movie here. They get the time machine, which is the telephone booth.
Now, did they rip that off from your other thing?
Yeah, probably from Doctor Who. Yeah,
that's what I was thinking the whole time. I would have never known Doctor Who until I met you, really, Sean. It's like I was thinking that. I was like, that wasn't the most original thing to have them fly through time with.
And I would also say, though, that it was very Doctor Who back in the 80s was practically unheard of in America. So it is entirely possible that the writer just came up with it on his own. If it was nowadays, yeah, because Doctor Who was all over the place. But back then, it was, super niche and only available in, the United States in the middle of the night on PBS. So I'm going to give him a pass.
Okay.
Honestly, I would be very surprised if the writer of this movie came up with that idea independently. What's got to piss you off, Sean, is I'm sure that there are American fans that think that Doctor Who ripped off Bill and Ted.
But what as far as saying is, like, there's not a lot to this movie, is they get Billy the Kid first, I believe. There's like a little barroom brawl that they get involved in. Then they save Billy the Kid. They get Socrates. Socrates. They spend all of 2 minutes, and we're getting a visit from my cat. Spend less than 2 minutes in Greece, and then it's off to their next stop, which is
medieval Europe.
Yeah, which they don't get anybody from medieval Europe, I don't think.
Well,
they meet the princesses. Yeah, they meet the princesses, but that's about it.
Yeah, they have some problems in medieval Europe. But you also have to remember the subplot with Napoleon and Ted's younger brother.
Oh, that's right. So yeah, Napoleon is
more entertaining subplots in the movie.
Yeah.
They get.
Go ahead.
Napoleon accidentally gets blown into the circus of time, following Rufus's initial showing them how to use the time machine when they go to 17th century Austria, 18th century Austria during the Battle of Waterloo or whatever. And and then Napoleon ends up back at their house, and Ted ends up getting his little brother Deacon to watch him, although Deacon doesn't do a very good job, mostly because Napoleon is a dick.
Yes, he is. And he's very fun, if I may say that. I want to ask the question in a minute who your favorite historical ones are in this. But yeah, I enjoyed the historical characters in this. I really enjoy when they get to the mall. I like Attila the Hun.
I think
They get Mozart. Let's go through it for a second. They get Mozart
Beethoven.
From Austria, right? I can't remember where they got him from.
So they got Beethoven. Napoleon, Billy the Kid.
I hate Billy the Kid. I hate Billy the Kid in this, but yeah, go ahead.
Socrates, then
Freud,
Sigmund Freud,
Attila the Hun, and
Joan of
Beethoven.
Arc, Genghis Khan.
Yeah. Well, I thought there was some. I thought it was really cool when they brought him back to the future, though. In the 80s, future's, always a mall, right? But I love the mall scene. I actually do love that scene in the mall where you have Mozart tearing it up on, I think, like a Casio keyboard, and you had Attila the Hun. I can't remember. He's got a baseball bat, I think it is.
Yeah, he's in a sporting goods store.
Yeah, that's right. You have him like kind of fucking up the mannequins and stuff like that, and then also the Go-Go Girl, which I think was great for the 80s kind of nostalgia. It becomes like the aerobics woman.
Yeah, she takes over an aerobics class.
Yeah.
I would say I agree with you. I did like the mall scene.
Mm-hmm.
The best is you have Socrates and Billy the Kid trying to pick up women in the
that's awesome.
food court.
I'm Billy. This here is Socrates.
Socrates.
We're from history. Hello. I'm Dr. Freud, but you may call me Siki.
And also don't forget Napoleon's on that he's at Waterloo, and he like the Waterloo Park.
Yeah, there's this weird, really weird extended montage. I mean, that goes on for a long time of Napoleon at a water park. They definitely padded out this movie. There's a few montages.
Well, I mean, the one thing I'll say is that, getting into what we're talking about, like if you're someone who loves history, like we do, one of the questions that you often ask yourself as a history lover is like, how would these great historical figures react to our world today? And Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure answers that question in its own way. And like, as someone who likes history, watching that and watching these historical characters interact in the mall, doing these kind of like mundane by our standards things, but finding like wonder and excitement in them. It's extremely cool.
I agree. And they, let's talk about it. Remember, which one is going to go to military school if he doesn't pass? I can't, is that the guy that didn't get his famous? I can't remember.
No, Keanu Reeves, Ted is going to go to military school.
It is Keanu. Okay. Yeah. Is it, when they do the presentation too, they kind of don't address that I guess they all know English, that one point in time they all understand things, but still when they would pull them out and give this whole thing, they do kind of rock it. Remember at the end where they know history a little bit in their own Bill and Ted way.
None of the people that they've brought from the past can speak English.
Billy the Kid can, but
obviously because obviously Abraham Lincoln, but Freud
can.
A little bit.
Yeah, Freud can he?
Yeah, he does a psychoanalysis of Ted during the presentation.
That's right. As far as Joan of Arc and Socrates and Beethoven,
Socrates tries.
He tries. He picks us up excellent. But although it's weird, it's almost like they can understand what Bill and Ted are
the
saying.
whole time I noticed that, except for Napoleon a little bit. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's like Star Wars where everyone speaks a different language, but they all understand each other.
Yeah, Chewbacca is understood. Yeah, absolutely. But, Ed, I love that you picked this. Is such an Ed thing to pick is Bill. Of course, Ed would pick Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure to be one of the ones. And with what's coming out here, this really did launch Keanu Reeves, though. I went and looked up. The only research I did on this was like, wow, what did he do? And he got into Parenthood. Of course, the second movie of this where he became kind of I think before Point Break, it's really the only movies he kind of played was this kind of like, whoa, kind of stupid character, which was interesting.
Yeah, I mean, Sean and I were looking at it, and he basically went from playing these dumb characters, but then he would do these artsy, fartsy indie movies in between like big studio, dumb character movies.
Well, when was I guess Dracula was another big one. He got was it Dracula? Am I wrong on that?
Dracula was 93. He had Speed, which I think was 90.
That's 94.
94. Okay. And obviously
92 is Point Break. 92 is where I fell in love with Keanu and all of his.
95.
Which was?
Yeah, I think Dracula was like 95.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was before that. But anyway, we can look up the facts on all that later.
Right.
But his career took off. The other guy didn't seem to as much.
No, Alex Winter, he was in Lost Boys.
That's right.
He actually got into directing and writing. There was a very short-lived, but I really enjoyed it. He had a sketch comedy show on MTV called The Idiot Box.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that he produced and did all the writing for. And it was very irreverent. Also very kind of cringe by today's standards. But I mean, it was the kind of thing, if you think like a grandma getting hit with like an anvil is funny.
I do.
So it was a lot of weird. It was really weird. Definitely more in line with the stuff you would see in Bogus Journey than the more conventional comedy of Bill and Ted. And then he also produced a movie called Freaked, which is just bonkers insane, and also very much not as politically correct these days. Like Randy Quaid is kind of one of the big stars in that, and but Alex Winter now does documentaries.
Cool.
He did a documentary I saw on the dark web, and he's also did a documentary on like Bitcoin. So he's kind of involved in a lot of like digital world.
It's good that he's still working out there. I think, since Hillary's not here and I am still one of the hosts on this, I'd love to ask you, Ed, and you, Sean, if it's okay. How did this hold up for you? I know, Sean, you had talked about it a little bit earlier, but I'd really like to ask it again. How did it hold up from you from being a younger guy or, right around puberty guy to now being in your, middle-aged? How did you feel about it?
You can go first, Ed.
I mean, I know for me, this is one of those movies that, I've come back to from time to time. I probably watch Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure like every 3 or 4 years or so. Yeah, I mean, I like it.
Of course you did. Yes.
I'm a fan of it. And I think that, the first movie, as far as like time travel comedies go, it's up there. I feel like, Alex Winter and Keanu's characters, for what they're trying to do, are very effective. There's a lot of like little bits of humor here and there, especially they do a good job of carrying some bits over into the next movie, like, Bill's stepmom and,
Well, I want to talk about that character.
Ted.
Hi, Bill. Want a ride?
Sure, Missy. I mean, Mom.
So Bill's stepmom is a girl who was like a senior when they were sophomores or freshmen. So she's only 4 years older than Bill and married to his dad. And the two of them
apparently asked her to the prom when he was a freshman.
Yeah, and they can't stop staring at, was it Missy is her name?
Yeah.
And she's like super nice. She drives him around. She picks him up from school.
Yeah.
Makes their lunches and dinners for her. But there's a really creepy scene where she brings Bill and Ted like grilled cheese sandwiches or something like that. And the dad comes in and kicks Bill out of his own room so he can have sex with his stepmom.
Yeah, I remember. I took a beat on this one. Yeah, I was like, you're not going to see that script as often today.
And then during the what do you call it, their presentation, she sidles up to Bernie Casey, and they give each other like a knowing look, like there may be some sort of history.
Well, yeah, because in that same scene, with where you meet Bill's dad and everything. When she initially comes in, she starts talking to Bill and Ted about Mr. Ryan, their teacher, because apparently he was her teacher as well. And so they kind of pay that off when she shows up to the presentation. So.
Yeah, Sean, give me, obviously this scene's awesome, but I still want to hear your take on this. You didn't like it at all then. How about now?
For me, it was just, this time around, it was just kind of there. There were a couple of scenes that popped for me. Like I said, I agree with you. The mall scene was kind of fun. For some reason, I did latch on to the stepmom, but I think more so in the next movie, which we'll talk about her again in the sequel, because she has some more stuff going on there.
There's
but
some then and what happening.
Yeah. But again, I could take or leave this movie. It really didn't make much of an impression. It's funny, but also very kind of, it gets more lazy in the second one, but their time buddies get locked up in jail. So they need to steal Keanu's dad, who's a police officer's keys, to break him out.
If only we could go back in time to when he had him and steal him then.
Well, why can't we?
Because we don't got time. We could do it after the report. Ted, good thinking, dude.
So they're like really kind of, not that, again, time travel doesn't exist, but really playing fast and loose with the laws of time travel. Even when they get into the police station, they start like, oh, hey, like, let's remember to go ahead in time to warn ourselves about this thing that's just happened to us. So
yeah. There's some suspension of disbelief.
Yeah.
Even amongst the time travel presence, premise, because all of a sudden this garbage can appears out of nowhere and falls on Ted's dad, which is like, how would they even hang that? Or it's.
Well, even if you think about it, their presentation has lights and music and sound effects and, you
have to assume that they time travel rigged that as well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, to me, it seemed like, too, thinking about the times, and I hope I don't look silly on this, but to me, looking back at it, going back, it's one of the first times as a comedian, and I think I always thought of myself as getting into this, right, as doing comedy someday in my life, is I really did respect George Carlin for taking it was the first time I'd seen a comedian that really wasn't that funny. He just plays the guy, and I always liked that, to be able to watch. He's just acting in it. He's not trying to be funny in one liner. He does a couple, but it's more just a straight role. But it was a part of me that really thought that this was, and I know Ed and you are more movie buffs than I am on this, but it felt like somebody had just watched Back to the Future, and I think it had just come out a little while ago, and they're like, oh, I know what we could do. Let's make it on the stupider way. And it felt like that to me, where it was almost like that was the catalyst. And I think, am I right? I think Back to the Future came out in 85, 86, so it would make sense time-wise.
Mm-hmm.
But is that right, time-wise, when that came out? Does anybody know?
I believe so. Obviously, the Back to the Future 1 had already come out, and I think Back to the Future 2, if not 3, had also come out by this point in time.
I mean, I think that
I just felt like they had watched that and be like, hey, as a script writer, right, which we all are on this, was like, let's flip that and have it where we actually do it. And it seems like that was going on in movies right there for a second.
Yeah,
you know
I mean, I think you're totally right about that. I think that probably one of the reasons why a movie like this got greenlit or even written at all was to kind of capitalize on Back to the Future. And, it's people time travel, as far as sci-fi goes, is a really popular subgenre in general. You can do a lot with it, and with time travel stuff, instead of creating Star Wars type effects, you can just get period costumes. And so it's one of the cheaper kind of sci-fi things you can do in that respect.
Yeah. Well, and also Ed and Sean and I, again, we talk about it. I was obviously a history major, and I'm not saying that to be cool, but I will say, believe it or not, this movie was one of the few times I remember, even as a kid, hey, history can be cool. You know what I mean? It's like, I know that sounds as cheesy it is. I do remember having that effect. It's like, wow, what was that? I should take this history class and think about it more dreamy than as boring, you know, which I kind of liked about that movie.
So would you guys recommend this movie to people who have never seen it before?
No.
I would. You know,
I'm with Brad. I mean, I guess it's considered an iconic movie, but yeah, I say you could miss it and your life would not be the same.
Absolutely. I mean, like, Ed, I love it. Like, for us, it's nostalgic to go back to then. But yeah, if you're really asking me, I've told people to go back, and I love Meatballs. It's another movie I want to do on here with Bill Murray. You know, I'm a Bill Murray guy. But obviously, in my life, I've how do I put this up, making myself look stupid? Sometimes I've dated younger than me in my life, and then I'll take them and watch that movie. And that one is so late 70s, 80s that they're like, I don't get it. What is this camp stuff? And this is another one of those ones when you see it, it just seems like it's stuck right there in that time. So I know I wouldn't want a new person to watch this.
I mean, my thing is, it's if you're looking for like kind of a light, kind of very hopeful, kind of very optimistic kind of snapshot of like the late 80s, it's a pretty good thing to watch. But again, if you're someone that is looking for something like intelligent
Story.
This is not that.
No.
Yeah, it definitely seems like a bunch of sketches kind of thrown together. Like every period in history never really, aside from like a few like England and maybe Billy the Kid, and that's about it.
I mean, another scene that I want to talk about before we go is before they can leave to do the history report, before Missy will take them, she makes them do Bill's chores around the house. So you have a scene with all these great historical figures doing common household chores.
Yeah.
Which is, again, another montage.
Not to mention that Bill and Ted have to give them a tutorial on how you vacuum, how you wipe like sliding door windows.
Yeah, and am I wrong? Is this the one? I'm so sorry. Like I said, we'll get to this when we get to Bogus One, but I watched this a little intoxicated the other night again. Was this the one where they accidentally go to the future in it, and they had they're revered as gods?
Yeah.
Is this one or the next one?
That's this one.
This one.
Yeah, to where like I always thought that was kind of cool. You know what? And what Ed said is what I recommended. My answer is, if you have if you like to smoke weed and you enjoy history, it's a fun little dumb ride. But again, I'm not gonna. I'd recommend this one over the one we're about to go over next. Yes.
All right, so that is going to be next week. So this has been Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Thumbs up from Ed. Thumbs down from Brad and myself. I'm gonna put it in the middle for me. Right. I'm gonna be like one of these signs. Yeah. So you're Switzerland. You're neutral. Absolutely. I actually want to hear from you guys, the viewers, what you think about Bill and Ted. Like I said, it is considered kind of like a classic movie, but I just do not like it. And then also let us know, are you going to go see the new one? And you can also, there'll be a link where you can get your very own Nerds of Comedy t-shirts. Help support the Push Comedy Theater when you buy them. Yes, and vote Brad for to be host. You want us to be the permanent co-host as opposed to co-host with? No, I'd like to set up a poll where I beat her, where people are like, "Oh, I like Brad better," and then resign. Like, "Oh, I'll let her do it." I want it to be more of that kind of thing, not like the masses need her. I will say, her videos do a lot better than yours. That's not always true. I've looked them up. There's a couple ones that are fighting back. She has one. That damn one that she's beating the hell out of me was like, what was it? Bring It On or something. Bring It On, yeah. I mean, I guess technically you were on that too, but I mean. I was in that show, wasn't I? Mm-hmm. I think there's a message in that. She claims that victory is hers. Anyway, we will be back next week. The three of us are coming back next week for Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey. Until then, I am Sean. I am Brad. Party on.
Ed Carden, be excellent to each other. Strange things are afoot at the Circle K.